Now we are going to study about passive voice sentence structure. So what is passive voice sentence structure? It's empathize the actions recipients, the subject rather than the performer, means the agent. It highlights the action's outcome, focusing on what happened to the subject rather than who did it. In passive voice, the subject receives action, means verb. It acted upon is the focus of the sentence. The agent means the performance of the action is secondary and may be omitted, especially if the doer of the action is unknown or unimportant. The sentence aims to empathize the subject's experience. Passive voice sentences structure like subject which receives the action, auxiliary verbs which is be, been, or being. Past participles means the main verb in its passive form. Prepositions means main verb by, with, from. Agents, the performers of the action. By using passive voice, you can also change the sentences, emphasis, making the subject more prominent. De-empathize the agent. Create a more formal or objective tone. Remember, passive voice is a valuable tool in language, but it is essential to use it appropriately and not to overuse it, as it can lead to unclear or worldly writing. The passive voice sentence structure typically follow the order with the subject, auxiliary verbs, past participles, prepositions, agents. Here is a breakdown structure of all these subtopics. So, subject. In subject, the noun or pronoun that receive the action. In auxiliary verbs, be, been, or being with agree with the subject in number and person. Past participle. In past participle, the main verb in its passive form which agrees with the subject in number and gender. Preposition by using by, with, or from which introduce the agents. Agent, the noun or pronoun that performs the action. So I have some examples regarding this. The ball was thrown by John. So here, subject is the ball, auxiliary verbs was, past participle thrown, preposition by, agent is John. Next, the play is being written by the author. So here the subject is the play, auxiliary verbs is being, past participle is written, preposition is by, and agent is the author. So note that the agent is not always necessary. The preposition can change depending on the context. So here are some more detailed breakdown of the passive voice sentence structure. So when using in simple present passive, you use subject plus is plus past participles plus by plus agent. When using simple past passive, you can use subject plus was plus past participle plus by plus agent. When using present continuous passive, you can use it subject plus is being plus past participle plus by plus agent. When using past continuous passive, you can use subject plus was being plus past participle plus by plus agent. There's a changes of, you can understand, you're just changing was being, is being, and while you using the future continuous passive, all the things the same, but the subject plus will be being will change plus past participle plus by plus agent. So this is the structure of. Now we just going through of object emphasis. So what is object emphasis? Object emphasis in the passive voice means that the focus is on the object. The thing received the action rather than the subject, the doer of the action. In other words, the emphasis is on what is happening to the object rather than who is performing the action. In passive voice, the object becomes the main focus of the sentence and the subject is secondary or sometimes omitted. This can be useful for empathizing the importance of the object, highlighting the action's impact on the object. You can also create a more objective tone, de-empathizing the subject's role. For example, the new policy was implemented by the management. So here, subject is management and object is policy. Empathizes on the policy object being implemented. So the play was written by Shakespeare. Here, subject is Shakespeare and object is play. Empathizes on the play object being written. So by this using object empathesis in passive voice, you can draw the attention to the object's role in the action and create a different perspectives in your writing skills or having the communication skills. What are the examples of object empathesis? So I have some different examples of object empathesis are first, the new employee was thoroughly trained by HR department. So in this statement, emphasis on the employee being trained. The package was carefully delivered by the courier service. Here, emphasis on the package being delivered. The research paper was thoroughly reviewed by the academic committee. Here, emphasis on the paper being reviewed. Next is the artwork was skillfully created by the artist. Here the emphasis is on the artwork being created. The concert was beautifully performed by the orchestra. Emphasis is on the concert being performed. The new product was extensively tested by the quality control team. Here emphasis is on the product being tested. The historical building was mysteriously restored by the conversion team. Here, emphasis on the building team restored. The medical breakthrough was underbreaking research by the scientist. Here, emphasis on the breakthrough being the research. The sports car was expectedly designed by the automotive team. Here, emphasis on the car being designed. The literary award was proudly accepted by the order. So here the empathize means the awarding being accepted. So in each of these examples, the object, the thing receiving the action is empathized, and the subject, the doer of the action, is secondary or sometimes omitted. So this creates a focus on object experience, highlighting what happened to it rather than who did it. So this is object empathizes. Now we are going further to subject absence or placement. So what is subject absence or placements? In passive voice, the subject means the doer of the action can absent or place differently in the sentence, which can change the meaning of emphasis of the sentence. Here are some example I'm going to discuss with you all. The subject absence. See, the subject is not mentioned at all, empathizing the action and the object. For example, the play was written. See, here the focus is on the play, not the writer. Subject placement. The subject is placed at the end of the sentence after the preposition, means by. For example, the play was written by Shakespeare. See, here I'm using by. The focus is still on the play, but the writer is mentioned. You just here the focus is only the play, but here the writer is mentioned. See, subject emphasis means the subject is placed at the beginning of the sentence before the passive verb. So Shakespeare wrote the play. The focus in on the Shakespeare, the writer. By changing the subject's presence and placements, you can shift the emphasis and meaning of the sentence from the action and object to the doer of the action, which is subject. From the doer of the action to the action and object. To empathizes the object's experience or the subject's role. So this flexibility in subject placements and have absence in the key feature of passive voice allow you to adjust the sentence's focus and meaning to suit your communication needs. Here I have some example of subject absence of placements, like subject absence. See, in this example, the ball was thrown. No mention of who were throwing the ball. The play was written. So here, no mention of who wrote the play. The package was delivered. Here, there's no mention that who delivered the package. When I'm using the subject placement after by, it means the ball was thrown by John. Here, I'm just focusing on the ball, but with Jones as the thrower. The play was written by Shakespeare. I'm just focusing on the play with Shakespeare as the writer. The package was delivered by the courier. Here, the focus is on the package with the courier as the deliverer. Subject emphasis at the beginning. When I'm just using the at the beginning, we will use John threw the ball. See, here, focus on the John, the thrower. Shakespeare wrote the play. Means focus on the Shakespeare, the writer. The courier delivered the package. Here, the focus on the courier, the deliverer. So there is a variation. For example, the new employee was trained, means subject absence. The new employee was trained by the HR department, means subject placements after by. The HR department trained the new employee, means subject emphasis at the beginning. So these examples demonstrate how absent of placements can change the focus and empathizes of a sentence in a passive voice. So now just move for the examples. Introduction to passive voice. See, welcome to this world to of passive voice. Passive voice is a grammatical constructions that empathizes the recipients of an action rather than the performer. In other words, it highlights what happened to the subject rather than who does the action. In passive voice, the subject received the action means verb. The focus is on the action's outcomes, not the doer. The agents means performer may be omitted or placed after the prepositions means by. So passive voice is used to change the sentence's emphasis, de-empathize the agent. It's also create a more formal or objective tone. Focus on the action's impact on the subject. For example, the ball was thrown by John. Here, active voice is John threw the ball. I'm just focusing on the John now. Passive voice, the ball was thrown by John. The focus is on the ball. So we just include all the examples of passive voices. For example, the play was performed by the talent cast. See, here I'm just focusing on the play, not the performer. Active voice, a talented cast performed the play. The research was conducted by a team of scientists. Here I'm just focusing on the research, not the scientist. In active voice, a team of scientists conducted the research. The package was delivered to the customer, means I'm just focusing on the package, not to deliver. In passive voice, the deliver service delivered the package to the customer. The new policy was implemented by the management. I'm just focusing on the policy, not the management. In passive voice, the management implemented the new policy. The painting was created by the famous artist. So I am just focusing on the paint, not the artist. So in passive voice, a famous artist created by the painting. The data was analyzed by the statisticians. So I'm just focus on the data, not statisticians. In a passive voice, the statisticians analyze the data. The award was presented to the winner. I am just focusing on the award, not the presenter. In passive voice, the judge presented the award to the winner. The software was developed by a team of programs. I'm just focusing on the software, not the programmers. Here, I'm just active, passive voice, a team of programmers developed the software. So these examples illustrate how passive voice can use in different constant to empathize the action outcomes rather than the doer. So let's go to the next slide. Changing voices. What is changing voices? Changing voices have several meaning or depending on the context. So first is grammar. Changing the voice of a sentence from active to passive or vice versa, as we discussed earlier. Writing style. Altering the tone and tone of voice or point of view in writing to suit different purposes, audience, or genres. So, public speaking, adapting one's speaking voice, tone, or pitch to convey different emotions, attitudes, or messages. Linguistics, shifting between different languages, dialects, or the essence. Creative expressions. You must having the experimenting with different narrative voices, personas, or characters perceptives in the creating writings. Personal growth. It's developing a new perspective, outlook, or attitude in life, symbolized by the change of voice. In journal, changing voice refers to the act of modifying or adopting a different voice tone or perspective to convey meaning, adapt to context, or express oneself effectively. So, changing voice refers to the process of converting a sentence from one voice to another, such as active to passive, passive to active. This can be useful for changing empathizers of a sentence, varying sentence structure, for clarity or style, converting between different grammatical perspectives. Here, I have some different examples of changing voices of active to passive. The chef cooked the meal means active. The meal was cooked by chef. This is passive. While I'm just changing into vice versa, passive to active, the play was written by Shakespeare. This is passive. Shakespeare wrote the play. This is active. So by changing the voice, you can reframe a sentence to suit your writing needs and create different effects for your videos. So what is active and passive voice? Active and passive voice are two grammatical constructions that differ in their empathizes and having different sentence structure. In active voice, the subject performs the action, empathizes in on the doer, means agent, which is structure is subject plus verb plus object, which is SVO. For example, the dog bites the man. The dog is the doer. She writes the letter. She is the doer. In passive voice, the subject receives the action, means verb. Empathizes is on the actions, recipients, means patient rather than the doer. So here the structure is verb plus subject plus verb in the passive form, by plus agent is optional. So example is the man was bitten by the dog. The man received the action. The letter was written by her, means the letter received the action. There the key difference between the active voice empathizes the doer, while passive voice empathizes the action recipients. Active voice is more direct and clearer, while passive voice can be more formal or less direct. When to use each? Active voice for most everyday writing and speaking, as it's clear to more concise. Passive voice in formal writing, scientific or technical context, or when the doer is unknown or unimportant. Remember, both voices have their users, and having masters both can enhance your writing and communication skills. Changing sentences from active to passive voice. Here, to change a sentence from active to passive voice, you have to follow some steps that identify the subject and verb in the active sentences, reverse the role, make the object receiver of the action, the new subject. Change the verb to its passive form, usually adding ed or en. By and add by and the original subject, now the agent if desired. So example, active, the, the chef cooks the meal. The passive is the meal is cooked by the chef. Next, the team is building the house. The house is being built by the team. The teacher graded the assignment. The assignment were graded by the teacher. Remember, the passive subject received the action. The passive verb in the form, which is was verb plus past participle. For example, is cooked, was graded, were graded. So this is all the comes into the passive verb in the form of is, was, were plus past participle. The original subject agent is introduced by in the passive sentences. So practice changing sentence from the active to passive voice to become more comfortable with this grammatical construction. Let's discuss some examples changing sentences from active to passive. Like the manager hired a new employee. Passive, a new employer was hired by the manager. Next, the storm destroyed the roof. The roof was destroyed by the storm. The scientist conducted the experiment. The experiment was conducted by the scientist. The company will launch a new product next month. A new product will be launched by the company next month. See, I'm using by the company. Active into the passive. Now active, the artist painted the mural. The mural was painted by the artist. The coach trained the team. The team was trained by the coach. The writer wrote the novel. The novel was written by the writer. The gardener waters the plant. So the plants were watered by the gardener. Now let's go to the changing sentences from passive to active voice. So to change the sentence from passive to active voice, you have to follow some steps like identify the subject and verb in the passive sentences, reverse the role, make the agent doer, the new subject, change the verb to its active form, usually removing ed or en. See, while using active to passive, you have to include ed or en. In passive to active voice, you have to remove ed and en word. Move the original subject means the receiver of the action to the object position. So I have some examples regarding this. In passive, the play was written by Shakespeare. In active, Shakespeare wrote the play. See, I'm not using any ed and en here. Next, the package was delivered by the courier. See, in passive, it's look ed. Now in active, the courier delivered by the package. Next, the research was conducted by a team of scientists. The team of scientists conduct the research. The award was presented to the winner. The judges present the award to the winner. The software was developed by a team of programmers. A team of programmers developed the software. So remember, the active subject performs the action. The action verb is in its base form. An example, write, deliver, conduct. So an original passive subject becomes the object in the active sentences. So practice changing sentences from passive to active voice to become more comfortable with this grammatical constructions. I have some more examples of change in sentences from passive to active voice. Here are some examples, like the new employee was hired by the manager. So here, when I'm just changing into active, the manager hired the new employee. Simple. In passive, the package was shipped by the company. The company shipped the package. The play was directed by the famous director. A famous director directed the play. The research was funded by a grant. A grant funded the research. The award was given to the winner. The judge gave the award to the winner. The project was managed by a team leader. A team leader managed the project. The project was written by a committee. A committee wrote the report. The decisions was made by the board. The board made the decision. The product was designed by a team of engineers. So a team of engineers designed the product. So these all the examples of active converting into the passive into active voices. So remember, in active voice, the focus is on the doer, which is agent of the action, while in passive voice, the focus is on the action recipients. By changing the sentence structure, you can also empathize different aspects of the action. How you identify active and passive sentences. So to identify whether a sentence is active or passive, you have to follow some steps, like look for the verb, find the main verb in the sentence, check the subject. You have to identify in the sentence, you have to identify the subject. Ask who did the action. If the subject performs the action, it's an active sentence. If the subject received the action, it's a passive sentence. So example, the dog bites the man, which is active. See, here verb is bites. Subject is dog. And who did the action? The dog did the action. So here the dog is subject. The man was bitten by the dog. Here the passive. In this sentence, verb is was bitten and subject is man. And who did the action? The dog did the action. I have more examples. Let's just discuss. The, the chef cooks the meal in active, and in passive, the meal is cooked by the chef. The company will launch the product. Active. In passive, the product will be launched by the company. So remember, in active sentences, subject performs the action, and in passive sentences, subject receives the action. Practice identify active and passive sentences to become more comfortable with this grammatical concept. Let's just break down the identify active passive sentence in more detail. So find the main verb. The main verb in the action word is in the sentence. It's the word what tells what the subject is doing or what is happening to the subject. For example, the dog bites the man. Here the main verb is bite. You have to identify the subject. The subject is the noun or the pronoun that performs or receives the action. It's the word that the verb is acting upon. For example, the dog bites the man. So here the subject is dog. And in third steps, you are just asking the action regarding. If the subject performs the action, it's an active sentence. If the subject receives the action, it's a passive sentence. So example of this, the dog bites the man. Who did the action? The dog did the action. Therefore, it's an active sentences. The meal is cooked by chef. Main verb is cooked. Subject is meal. Who did the action? The chef did the action. Therefore, it's a passive sentences. The company will launch the product. The main verb is will launch. Subject in this line is company. And who did the action? Company will do the action. Therefore, it is a active sentences. The product will be launched by the company. See, in this, the main verb is will be launched. And the subject is product. And who did the action? company will do the action, therefore it is a passive sentences. By following these steps, you can accurately identify whether a sentence is active or passive. Remember, I'm just announcing again. Active sentences, subject performs the action, and in passive sentences, the subject receives the action. So now let's go for the tips for changing sentences from active to passive voice. So I have some tips for challenging sentences from having the active to passive voice, which is you have to identify the verb first. Find the main verb in the sentence and it will change form in the passive voice. Swap the subject and object. Make the object of the active sentence the subject of the passive sentence. Change the verb form. Use the passive form of the verb, which is usually adding by ed or